All right, so I am here today with Ray. He was a sales manager for a new car dealership. And Ray, I want to ask you what everybody wants to know. What
Yes.
what is it that dealers do not want you to know behind closed doors?
The truth. They don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know how much they're making on you because well then they know you'll feel bad. But more than anything, they they really just don't want to. Most dealers don't want you to fully grasp what it is that you're doing. So when I say they don't want you to know the truth, like if you said to the dealer, "Would you share the invoice with me?" A lot of dealers are going to say, "Well, absolutely not." Okay. Why? What are you afraid of if you won't share the invoice? If you asked me, would I share the invoice with you? My response was absolutely. Doesn't mean I'm going to sell it to you at the invoice, but I'll be more than happy to let you know what I paid for the car. That's not what you're going to be able to pay for the car. If you'd like to pay that for the car, you got an extra 10, $14 million you don't know what to do with, buy the dealership and you can pay exactly what's on that invoice. So that more than anything was just they didn't dealers don't feel comfortable sharing the truth. What was a few good men with Jack Nicholson when he was on the stand and Tom Cruise was questioning him, and Jack Nicholson's answer was the truth. You can't handle the truth. Well,
So
you know that, that
that's very interesting because I mean, used car dealers are the exact same way. They don't want to actually tell you the price. But what we do at our dealership is that's our best negotiation tactic. We'll if you're not charging outrageous prices and not just gouging customers, then you can literally go to them and show them. I'll pull my price sheet, and if they want to negotiate, I'll say, "Look, I've got $2,500 in this car, and I'm selling it to
uh-huh.
you for $3,500." And every time that I've done that, they literally say, "Oh, you're making $1,000. That seems fair. You know what? We'll take it." And there's never a pushback.
Well, typically, I used to literally when people would say I only want to pay invoice, and I would say, well, let's pretend just for a minute that you're a partner in the business, okay? And we've spent you and I partners here. We've spent $40,000 for this vehicle. As my partner, what do you think a fair return on your investment should be? And I'm pretty sure you're not going to say zero. And somebody would say, "Well, I don't know. If you spend $40,000, you should probably make I don't know $800, $1,000. Would that be fair with you? If is that all you want to make on a $40,000 investment? Okay, maybe a couple thousand. Okay, good. We have a deal.
Right.
Yeah, and you put the ball in their court. I mean, if it was your money, what would you want to get back for it?
So
You don't
let's
want to do it for zero.
Yes, I want to go back to invoice pricing because I get a lot of questions about, okay, what are these new car dealers actually paying for these cars, right? And so what was the last franchise you worked for? Was it Acura?
Audi.
Audi. So
Yes.
Audi, then probably a new car when you were there. This is before the pandemic. So what, 35 to $40,000?
Oh, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So on a $40,000 Audi, that was being the MSRP was $40,000.
Yeah.
What just ballpark? What would be the invoice price that the dealership would actually be paying
There
for?
was there was about an 8% margin. So 10% would have been 4 grand. So it would have been what, $3,600.
Okay,
So there was
okay.
about a 3600 markup.
So and
Now
that's the
having
MSRP though.
yeah, from
Right.
from invoice to MSRP was about $3600 on a $40,000 car. Now, having said that, there was floor plan assistance. So if you sold it within 15 days, that floor plan assistance was pure profit. There was marketing assistance money to help you advertise the car. And then there were always volume bonuses that Audi had. And I will never forget this. When I first went to that store, when they moved me from the mini store to that store, and I met my Audi rep, he said, "Let me just share with you how we work here at Audi." Okay, how do we work? He said, "We don't expect you to make a profit from the customer. Your profits are going to come from us." I said, "Excuse me?" Well,
Yeah.
we don't really expect you to make a profit from the customer. We expect you to hit your sales objectives, and and that big chunk that you get from us at the end of the month, that'll be your profit. And I just thought, man, that's the strangest way to look at things, but that's the way they looked at it. I mean, literally, at the beginning of every month, I used to ask them in our district, what was the average gross profit by model? And he'd break it down for me. And I had a customer, she wanted to custom order a Q3. And I said, I'm going to make this real simple for you. I said, in our district, the average gross profit on a Q3 is the dealership loses $1,000. It's invoice less $1,000. I will sell you the vehicle for invoice less $1,000 because that's the market price for that vehicle right now. It makes the negotiating pretty easy.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've actually talked to some other GMs and asked them about pricing, and they told me there was a Nissan dealership. It said we don't really make money on the actual cars. Where we make money is off the dock fee. We make money off service, and we
Mm-hmm.
make money off of the back end, right? So
Yeah.
F&I. And they're really we're just I mean we get people in cars we're selling for under MSRP, and we know we're just not going to make we might make $1,000 $2,000 on the car, but that's not where our business is profitable.
I have a friend of mine who I worked with who owned a couple Nissan dealerships. And he owned them when they still had the stair step programs for the dealers. So you were expected to sell X number of cars. If you sold 90% of that number, you might have gotten $500 per car back from the manufacturer. If you sold 100%, you might have gotten 1,000. If you sold at 120%, you might have gotten $1,500 per car back. And my friend Bobby said to me, he said, it was the toughest thing in the world to accept the fact that I was going to lose money on every new car I sold just so I could hit the stair step program and make my money that way, plus off of F&I and service. So the money in a lot of stores, and I've said it on some of our Car Edge shows, you know, 3 years ago, average front end gross profit for mass market brands was $200 to $300 on a new car. People don't want to believe that. Okay. A lot of new car departments and dealerships are not profitable. They are the loss leader of the dealership so that you can trade cars, so that you can bring in service customers, so you can create parts and service customers, so you can create finance and insurance opportunities. The new cars were a loss leader.
So you were, I mean, obviously the margins on these new cars were really thin. I don't know how much you actually talked to the parts manager or whatever. What did the margins look like on that side, if you can even speak to that?
Well, obviously the margins are better on that
Right.
than they are on the sales side of things because the way it worked is most of the dealerships I worked at, whatever the retail price was for a part, that's what the customer paid, and that's what the sales department paid for it. So I never got a break from my parts and service department. I paid retail for everything. And that's why parts and service could be so profitable. And parts and service are profitable because service absorption is so very important. Dealerships, the benchmark is to try and have service absorption of about 75 to 80%. And what that means is you make enough profit from parts and service that it covers 75 to 80% of all the expenses in your store. So that sales, new and used, and F&I suddenly, whatever, if they can produce in big numbers, the store is going to make big numbers. I know Lexus dealerships where their service absorption is 105, 110%. So every penny of profit in sales and F&I is just additional profit for the dealership. So service and parts, they have big margins, and that's what really allows dealerships to use new cars as in the old days, use them as loss leaders.
So the moral of this story is do not get your car fixed at a franchise dealer and go to like a mom and pop kind of mechanic is what I would recommend to people
Yes.
if it's an older car.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Obviously, if you have a new car and it needs warranty repair, then the manufacturer's paying for it. You're not paying for it.
Right, right.
Um, but yeah, once you're out of warranty, once you don't need warranty repairs, the parts and service at dealerships are extremely profitable, and many do what's known as dynamic pricing, and that is they check in their area to see what the average price is for a particular service, if it's a brake service or a tune, whatever it is, so that they can price it accordingly, so that they are competitively priced with the mom and pop operators. Now you say to yourself, well, why do they do that? Well, because they want to get that business. That's kind of plus business for them, and they make big money on the warranty work from the manufacturers, because those checks always clear.
So now, what I will say on the smaller end of the mechanic spectrum or whatever, because we've dug into numbers, we have a mechanic on staff with us now, and
Hmm.
doing it for a decade now. I know kind of how the mechanic space works too, to be able to get the best price and know if I should even send a job to a mechanic or not. But what they'll use is there's this the holy book that they'll use and pull hours on whatever the job's going to take,
Yes.
and the amount of time that they estimate for these jobs is always astronomical. I can give you an example, just like replacing some coils on a on like a Toyota Camry or something like that. It'll take us 5 minutes to replace them. The parts will be somewhere around, I mean, it's $10 a coil
Uh
if
huh.
we order it online. But if you go and buy that retail part, it's $150 a coil, which is what you're paying, but they're not paying the retail price, right? And then they'll say that this job is an hour and 30 minutes. So you end up for this job paying $300, $400 when it's something that we could do for I mean, however many coils you need to replace, 10 bucks a pop. So
Yeah.
it's just it's ridiculous what a lot of these mechanics use now. I mean, that's the industry though. So that, I mean, they've got to get paid. I
It,
understand that completely, but the time frame that these books that they use, it's so far weighted in the mechanics realm than it is anywhere close to the customer.
it is if the mechanic is good at what he does. Okay. Obviously, if the mechanic is not really well versed on a certain type of repair, it might actually cost the mechanic. I've worked with mechanics at dealerships that were making 150, $175,000 a year, because they turned so many more hours according to book. It was, if there were jobs that paid 3 hours, that some of the mechanics were so good at it that they could do that job in an hour. Well,
Yep.
they did 1 hour's worth of work, got paid for three. Um, so the incentive is to train yourself how to do these jobs really well and quickly, and so that you don't have any comebacks. And as a tech, you can make a lot of money, but it takes a lot of work.
All right, so I want to change gears. So the only reason I even started this second channel, by the way, subscribe if you haven't. This is a brand new channel. You might not realize it, but the only reason I started this whole second channel is to get you on it and ask you this question, because I actually don't know how this system works and I want to know more about it. The allocation process for new car dealers. This is something that eludes me. I don't know. I know it's different from manufacturer. I know that a lot of these new car dealerships, they actually don't get the car straight from the manufacturer. There's a distributor that's in between the manufacturer and them for some brands,
Yes,
maybe. And I
for
could be completely
Toyota.
wrong about this, but
Yeah.
I would love to hear what the process is for this
In
allocation system.
in most cases, for most manufacturers, it's what they call a turn and earn system. What that means is the faster you turn a particular model, the more you earn. So if you have, say, 30 tundras, and you turn those 30 tundras in 15 days, so you're selling two a day, well, you're going to earn a bigger allocation when they allocate tundras the next month. If you're a different dealer and you have 30 tundras and it takes you 45 days to sell those 30 tundras, your allocation of Tundras is going to be much less than the dealer that's selling two a day. So it's a turn and earn system in most cases. If it's really popular stuff that is in short supply, um, you better have developed a good relationship with your factory representative. Okay, you have to. Am I allowed to curse on this show? Um,
Yeah, we'll bleep it out. Go ahead.
okay, yeah, you have to learn how to blow smoke up your factory rep. Okay, and so you always have to be on your factory rep's best side, so that when they have extra cars, the first dealer they think of giving them to is you, because,
Right.
well, you've puckered up to his butt better than anybody else has. So that's the other way that you get cars.
So you've been in the business for a long time, and I can even remember. Well, it never happened really in my era, but I still talk to a lot of the old timers. And when I first got into it, guys that've been into it for a very long time, and when they were going to buy wholesale things, there would always be some money that exchanged hands.
Yeah,
Would this same thing happen with the distributors, with the with whoever they were getting these vehicles from?
it could. Didn't happen at any of the dealerships I worked in. It could. There's, there's a very big dealer group in your neck of the woods, the Hendrick organization,
All right.
and well, he was convicted of bribery because he was bribing his Honda reps. He was paying his Honda reps in order for them to send allocation his way. It was an unfair business practice because um, those other dealers who weren't paying their reps weren't getting the cars. So does it happen? Yeah, it happens. There's dealerships that operate like that. And yes, in the old days, um, there were certain wholesalers that could go to certain used car managers, and those wholesalers always got to buy the car. It might not have always been the highest bid, but they got to buy the car because, well, used car managers were known as either quarterbacks or halfbacks. Were they getting a quarter, $25 back on each car they wholesaled to that guy, or were they getting $50 back on each car that they wholesaled?
So what about the models that are not desirable? So I think about going to these Ford dealership lots, right? And they're
Yes.
Mach-E's sitting everywhere, but there's no Mavericks. Like they can sell the Mavericks, they can't
Yeah.
sell the Mach-E's. So what happens in the cases where the dealer doesn't particularly want a certain model, but they still have to distribute these models?
Well, the the factory rep will oftentimes say, "I know you're a little heavy in Mach-E's at the moment, but if you could help me out, help them out.
Right.
If you could help us out, and I don't know, take 10 more Mach-E's. I know you don't need them. Take 10 more Mach-E's. I can probably find you 5 Mavericks if you were to help us out." So there's that reverse form of bribery that goes on. If it's the old, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's the whole thing. And that's why I've always said it's never really a partnership between a dealership and the manufacturer. Because the manufacturer, they don't really care. They just want to unload the stuff they have. So we'll sweeten the pot. You take 10 Mach-E's, we'll give you 5 Mavericks. We can all move on in life. Meanwhile, 6 months from now, you still have 8 of those 10 Mach-E's that they gave you, and it's costing you an arm and a leg. So, but that's how they do it.
Were you ever in a dealership, or even I mean, you've been there forever, so you've seen some rough times go through the car market. Was there ever a time where okay, the lots were just overloaded, or with the dealership that you had was overloaded, and you have to actually turn down allocation? I don't know if you're even able to
Yeah.
turn down allocation.
Well, it's an allocation system, so yes, you can turn it
Okay.
down. Okay, that goes on your the factory scorecard, and your factory rep scorecard is a negative against you for turning it down. Um, I'll give you a perfect example. I think it was November or December of 2008. I want to, or 2007. As sales were starting to slow up. The financial crisis was just in its infancy, but you could see sales were starting to slow up. And I really kept track of my inventory, my turn, how quickly I turned all my inventory. And I broke it down by model. And I noticed that all of a sudden my TLs in stock were just starting to build, and not by a little bit, by a lot of bit. And even though I might have only been selling 30 in a given month, all of a sudden I'm getting allocated 45. Well,
Uh-oh.
if I only turned 30, how did I suddenly earn 45? Somebody has too many TLs. Uh, I think that would be Acura had too many, so
Yeah.
they made us take them. And I could see that things were slowing down. Inventory was building up, and I got very concerned. And I found a dealer in California that was willing to buy 30 extra TLs for me. They were excess TLs for me, but he figured he could use them. And they were in a different zone than I was in. So I went to my GM and I said, I found a buyer for 30 of them. And she said, well, okay, let me check with our area vice president. And the area vice president said, well, check with the zone manager and see what the zone manager thinks. Now, I don't know why we would care what the zone manager thinks, because I knew the zone manager wasn't going to stroke us a check to make us whole at the end of the year. But the zone manager was fit to be tied. How could you even think about selling these cars to a dealership out of our zone? And why would you even do that? And so heard all this. The area vice president says, okay, don't sell them. We don't want to piss off the factory. 30
And
days goes by, and our TL inventory is just growing and growing. And John said to me, he said, Ray, you need to find some dealers to take some of these cars off their hand. Well, guess what? By that time, everybody else had figured out what I had figured out 30 days earlier, and nobody wanted any, and I couldn't get rid of them. So there was an example of the factory holding me hostage. Oh, why would you want to sell these cars out of our zone? You're going to cause us problems. If you ever need anything in the future, we're not going to be there to help you. Okay. So I had to sit on way too much inventory. And ultimately I got asked to retire from that dealership, 7 or 8 months later, when we couldn't sell all these TLs. I
so
tried to do the right thing.
so back then, I know, well, since you were forced to retire, you might have not saw all of these get sold, but what did they eventually like mark these down? How much
Of
did they mark
course.
them down to actually move them?
No, that's what you do. I mean, what else are you going to do? The only way you can make it palatable to somebody is to drop the price enough. When the financial crisis first hit, and I remember my factory rep said to me, he said, well, what do you think we should do? I said, well, I think you should make the deals so unbelievably compelling that even people who would know it's not in their best interest to do something right now are going to go, that deal's so good, we got to do it anyway. And so I used to have a whiteboard by the receptionist desk that said, TLs, invoice less whatever the factory incentive was. That was it. That was all you had to pay for the damn thing. As soon as you walked in, you knew what you had to pay. I mean, it was just, and if the incentive was $1,500, you were buying it for $1,500 back invoice. I just wanted to get rid of them. And there's only one way to get rid of stuff. It's price it so cheap that somebody will still buy it.
So back then, did you actually advertise this stuff? I mean, I don't
Oh, no,
know.
you weren't allowed to advertise a
Okay.
discount. Okay. That was part of what Honda and Acura came with. You can't use the term discount. You can't use the term invoice. You can't use the term below invoice. So I recorded a radio spot, and every time I used the word invoice, discount, below, it was bleeped out. Okay. And so you hear me talking bleep, 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 And the closing line of the ad was, "Hurry to Acura North Scottsdale to find out what the bleep is going on."
That's fantastic. So since you couldn't advertise this stuff, when you would actually have these few customers throughout the month that would actually walk in that had maybe some money, were you just like tackling them and saying, "All right, just whatever you have in your pocket, just give it to me and you can have an Acura."
It literally was like, if we said it was invoice less the rebate, whatever that might have been, whatever the incentive was, and the people would still want to argue with you, and if we could close them $400 or $500 below the invoice, we would sell it. I wasn't letting them leave.
Right.
I mean, we were selling on average at 104 new Acuras a month. By the time I left, we were selling 50 a month.
Wow, wow, wow.
Okay, that's a big difference. And
Yes, it
and
is.
and 3 months after I was asked to leave, they had their worst month ever. They sold 18 new cars in a month for a store that had averaged 104.
Wow.
Think
So
about that.
So do you feel like now we're seeing these strikes coming in? Ford's already got a deal done, right?
Oh, yes.
But do you see with the inventory starting to stack up at a lot of these? I always go back to Ford because Ford they've got inventory problems. I think they're the worst out of the big three. I know the numbers say that Stellantis is the worst,
Yes.
but I think the amount of F-150s being pumped into the system still, and then it's going to continue. I think they're going to have the biggest problem of any of those three. It's not going to be as bad as '08, but do you feel like we're going to start seeing a lot of these dealerships have to turn down allocations, or are they
I think they
still?
already are.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I know that, there's a Ford dealership in our trusted network, and they're turning down some of their allocation, because at a certain point, as the new car franchise, you have to realize that your objective and the factory's objective are not necessarily the same objective. Sometimes they intersect. Most of the time, they don't. The factory builds them, and the factory wants to get them off of their books and into your books, because that's when the factory makes their money. And the dealer starts looking and going, well, it's just going to sit here, and I don't want to have to pay for flooring that car for the 6, 8, 9, 10 months it might take to sell it. So we're going to turn it down. And and then the factory rep gets upset, and the factory, it's the zone manager gets upset. But like I said before, at the end of the year, they're not going to write you a check to make you whole if you're bleeding red at the end. They just don't do that. And so, as the dealer, you have to protect your best interest. The factory has no intentions of doing that for you, if that
So
makes any sense.
right. So here's my worry in this market right now. I don't know if it's a worry, but I mean they did to themselves. But okay, we just had this period of time where okay, we had these strikes go on. And the GMs that I've talked to, they were scared to turn down allocations. They were scared to not over order parts. They were scared to not buy these newer used vehicles at auction because they were worried that they were not going to get replaced. So
Mhm.
now that we have Ford that's going to ink this deal pretty soon, and production's already back up. The workers are back to work now. Um, what I worry is that allocations that should have been turned down were not, and now we're at a period where okay, they're going to have to turn them down, and it's going to be mass across the country.
Oh, and there's going to be additional allocations, yes, that Ford's going to want them to take, especially now that the facilities will be back up and running and producing at maximum levels. So yeah, it'll be like a come to Jesus meeting.
Right.
Okay, where the dealers are going to turn to the Ford and say, "We know you want us to take them. You just have to stop building them because we can't sell them fast enough for us to keep taking them." We should not be earning 2 or 3 replacement vehicles for every one vehicle that we sell. We didn't mind like 1-on-1, okay, maybe 1.5 to 1, but not 2 to 3 to 1. And so yeah, there's going to be some tough conversations, and I am sure that a lot of the Ford dealers will be having conversations with their members of the dealer advisory board. And that's where the conversations will start, where the Ford dealer advisory board members will have conversations with Ford and say, you got to slow down. You either have to slow down or you have to increase incentives. And the best case scenario might be you do both.
Yeah, probably do both. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
what
and so that's where the conversations will start.
and what I envision that will happen a month from now, after Ford realizes that all these allocations are being turned down, is that they're like, okay, everybody's back to work. Okay, everybody stop. Yeah, because we just can't. I mean, we're already seeing it with the Ford Lightning, right? They're shutting down some shifts. I
Yep.
mean, the Ford Lightning's a disaster. But I mean, you're gonna have to start seeing some production cool down on these F-150s, because if I mean, I know this is anecdotal and what I'm seeing, but I've been to so many Ford dealerships and they don't have any spaces.
Uh, you know, it, at a certain point, maybe they're going to be forced to build what it is that people can afford, as opposed to what it is that Ford wants to build. Just a thought here, that instead of Ford building all these 70, 80, $90,000 pickups, maybe they start concentrating on the low $40,000 pickups, or the upper $38,000 pickups, and they build those so that dealers can build up some incentive through sales of selling some things, of relieving themselves of some inventory. Um, this could get very ugly very quickly, because the cost of financing all that inventory, whether it be inventory that's sitting at Ford's lots for Ford to unload, or whether it be inventory sitting on the dealers' lots waiting for the dealers to unload them, I mean, that's all costing a lot more money today than it did even a year ago. So yeah, it's going to get ugly quick.
Yeah, I think so too. But Ray, I don't want to hold you up anymore. Thank you so much for coming on our channel, and go check out Ray on Car Edge and the Ray and Zach channel. And now you've got a new podcast coming up. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, Auto Insiders with Ray Shefsky. It's a Car Edge podcast, like we're a media company or something. I don't know. And it's where I interview people that are affiliated in the automobile industry. And as you can attest, Brandon, that the conversations that I have with someone might not necessarily be all about the industry itself, but we might delve into some personal tales of and family times and things like that.
Yeah, we got to talk about my insecurities on this thing, so that was great. Anyway, so if you're not subscribed, this is a brand new channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Ray, thank you so much again, and that's it. Awesome. I never know how to end these videos. I'm so bad at it.
Well,
Yeah.
no, that was good. That's it. We're done here.
Yeah.